We have breaking news out of Putnam County. That's where federal agents are serving search warrants at the Nuwabian compound.
We're counting at least 30 different police cars of various...
The officers are all walking around with shotguns drawn.
U.S. government helicopters, at least 2 that I can see at this point.
Nuwabian leader Malachi York is in federal court on the nation's largest prosecution of a single defendant in a child molestation case. York is the leader of the United Nuwabian Nation of Moors.
So it's we're going to have to come back by to get these people. Appreciate it. It's on a nice little piece of property.
This is where we do my garage, which is what you would term as pilgrimage. Before you go here and you walk this labyrinth, you come here. Each step is another prayer, right? You touch, you make your personal prayer, boom.
What do you do, Paul, if you're the sheriff? You come here with a court order to enforce some law. I've got a court order I've got to post here. You meet 3 individuals there wearing guns, and they say, you're not coming here.
The court's order has been willfully violated. There's no way I can expect to see if there's anyone in this building. Therefore, you're responsible if anyone is locked inside.
They've got their guns on. Tell me, Paul.
Performer. You had the jazz, he had the song The Originators. He was the first person to show Jay-Z how to put rap songs together. Even in the rap videos, they're all out there holding the pictures of Dr. York. They're wearing the clothing with the flags on it. Right there on 5FT's finger is the same flag. It was a song that Nas and Noriega did.
Cause I talk like Dr. Malachi York.
You know, right there, you know the influence that this man had.
Mr. York, you understand you're charged with 40 counts of aggravated child molestation, that you could receive a maximum sentence of 30 years in confinement for each count.
January of 2003, I read that he had pled guilty to the charges.
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Well, most attorneys know that you really can't plea bargain in the federal system as far as agreeing on a sentence. And so about June of that year, I read that the federal judge denied the plea agreement in the federal case. All right? And I knew at that point, I said, he has a problem. I mean, you have a man that's pled guilty to some very, very, very serious charges. It's been publicized for 6 months. And then the judge rejects the plea bargain.
Is sentenced to life in federal prison.
The federal judge imposed sentences totaling 135 years.
Hey Nick, what the hell is this?
This is where they pray.
It's fascinating.
I don't know why they didn't took their bikes.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Garfield A. Reed, and we're doing another show. This is part 4 for Dr. York, the trial and the conviction. This is part 4. And I have my Brother Anpu, in the queue. I'm going to bring him in right now because we're not even going to waste no time, man. We're just going to jump into it. How are you doing today, brother?
Peace. I'm doing good. Ready to jump into it.
Yeah, I'm jumping to it right now, man. I'm not even wasting no time. One of the things I want to clear up from last week is that the fact that the federal prosecution, they authorized Stanford University Medical Center to analyze Dr. York's blood for herpes viruses, simplex 1 and 2. And this was August 29th, 2002. Now, in August of that same year, they took vials upon vials of his blood to be tested to see if they could prove that the alleged victims got these diseases from him to further substantiate their allegations. All right. The test came back. The federal government was astonished. The results came out that Dr. York tested positive for the herpes simplex, not 1, but 2. I think it was 2. All right.
2.
So now,
right.
All right. The reason why I'm bringing that up, it wasn't mentioned in the trial transcripts for the federal government. They probably didn't feel that they needed to use it or whatever reason. We're not going to speak for them and their tactics. But I just want to make it clear that the brother called Dr. York, a.k.a. Dwight D. York, was positive for herpes virus simplex 2. Am I correct, my brother?
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, you're correct.
All right. Now the reason, and then I want to talk about Dr. York, and this might be some personal stuff, but I notice a lot of people saying that his name is not Dr. York, it's Malachi, and all this stupidness. Now let's get to the real deal about what this brother's name is, who is his father, who is his mother, and let's get that's foolishness out the way so people could be clear about the real truth about who this man is. All right? This doesn't have anything to do with the case. Well, technically it does for the people who like to spread rumors. Oh, it's not him, it's Dwight D. York and all this foolishness. So can you just put all of that to rest, this stupidness about Dwight D. York? Thank you, my brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a lot with that, but I'll be brief as possible. What it is that the only reason why Nuwaubians focus on the name was because there was a thought or a theory that because they have him. Well, let me start off. His legal name is Malachi York. All right, that's what his name is presently. Malachi York is all on his legal identification documents and things like that. So because the arrest warrant and things were brought up in the name of Dwight York, there was a theory that because they listed the wrong name, that there's a technical error, and that because of that, he should be free, or that he shouldn't be arrested or held. So then that kind of grew legs, and people were under the assumption of a false identity. Because you have within law where people get falsely identified and then they're acquitted or charges are dropped and so on and so forth, and they're released if they're detained or arrested, and their arrest record or whatever gets expunged or erased, etc. But that's a different story, and this is where the cross-up happens, because they thought because they had a former name that he used that it was basically a misidentification issue, and that wasn't the case at all. So what it was is that Dr. York, or Malachi York, his birth name was indeed Dwight York. And what happens is a lot of people will use his original birth certificate as a way of saying that he had no first name, or that Dwight is not his name. But his birth certificate didn't have any first name at all. And when you're born and you don't have a first name, they list you as your surname, or what we call your last name. So he was only listed on his birth certificate as baby male baby York. But he grew up and his name was indeed Dwight York. So he changed his name from Dwight York to Isa el-Hadi al-Mahdi, and then from Isa el-Hadi al-Mahdi, he changed it to Malachi York. So that's the history of his name. So he has 3 legal names that he's known by, formerly which is Dwight York, and then it changed to Isa El-Hadi al-Mahdi, and then it changed to Malachi York, and that's the name. That's his legal name to this day.
I think I heard you mention something about all his siblings have the name starting with D. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. His family, his siblings, his family members, their names. I guess it was a family tradition, but all of the children or siblings' names start with D, and this goes from his father, which is David Piper York Sr., and then their first son, which Nubians we knew him, or we know him as Oba, but his legal name is David Piper York Jr. And then you have Dale York, which we know as Waki, affectionately known as Waki. Then you have another sister, Deborah York, which Nubians affectionately call Aunt Black or Auntie. And then you have Dennis York, which is a brother. And then you have Dwight York, which is Dr. Malachi York. So all their names began with the D. And, it may have been a family thing or family tradition, but that's how it turned out.
Oh boy. All right.
So hold up, but now the thing is, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to use that as an example. That's an example of an issue that's really not an issue, but it was made into a very big issue. And it in turn, it wasted a lot of time and a lot of attention and focus on any efforts of helping Dr. York when people focused on his name. And there was a lot of flyers that were written and websites, comments and posts on websites about the name, to emphasize that, hey, Dwight D. York is not his name. The government has the wrong person in jail. That's really not him. All those things were really a waste of time. And it was a non-issue. So, just wanted to kind of point that out.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's. I'm going to read something from the case, and this is very interesting. Who is David Noel?
David Noel. He was a listed victim in the case.
All right. I'm going to read something for the audience. But he was a listed victim of Dr. York's sexual molestation. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Let's read this, and I want you to tell me if this was in the federal. This obviously was in the federal court. From David Noel. They asked him. They said, "Question: Who is this?" David Noel, Issa Johnson. Did you ever see Mr. York do a sex act to Issa? Did Issa appear older or younger than he is in Exhibit 16? David Noel, he looked a little younger than this. How old was he the first time you saw Mr. York do a sex act on him? David Noel, I'm not sure how old he was. I was 3 years older than him, so 5 or 6. What sex acts did you see Mr. York perform on Issa Johnson? David Noel, I've seen Issa perform oral sex on York. I've seen York attempt anal sex on Issa, and I've seen Issa attempt anal sex on York. Where was the first time you saw this? David Noel, in his house in the downstairs bedroom. Was anyone else present? David Noel, it was Nigella or Markula, which is Khadijah Mary. Now, that was David Noel. Now, let me ask you a question before we get into anything. Nigella and Markula, Khadijah Mary, were they also listed victims?
No, they were actually co-defendants. They actually were co-defendants in the state case.
All right. So Nigella, what's her relation and Markula to Dr. York?
They were mates of Dr. York. McCullough, right? Khadijah, right? Wives or mates.
All right.
Right.
All right. So that's clear. Now, let me ask you this. What happened to them as defendants?
Well, they had state charges against them and they weren't actually arrested when Dr. York and Kathy Johnson were arrested. They actually turned themselves in. They had warrants out for them, and they turned themselves in. They lived on the
not to cut your wisdom, but what charges were against Nigella and the other sister that were considered as wives or mates? What were the charges against them?
It was a few charges. I don't have the charges in front of me to read them, but they also consisted of molestation or taking part in sexual acts.
Were they ever found guilty?
No, that's what I was going to say. They turned themselves in, and they ended up taking a plea. They took what's called an Alford plea, and an Alford plea is, in a nutshell, it's a plea where you don't go to trial, but it's like midway where you're not admitting guilt, and you're not obviously saying that you're innocent. It's like a midway where you're pleading out on your own best interest. So it's a special kind of plea. It's called Alford plea, and that's what it's called. That's what they took, both of them.
Okay, all right. How long did they serve in jail? Do you know?
Actually, they didn't serve in jail. They were out on probation. They had they were sentenced to I believe 10 years of probation. Like I said, I don't have their information in front of me, but they were given I believe 10 years of probation, and they had to sign on the sex offenders list and so on. So they didn't serve actual prison time. Once they plead, then they were out. Now they were in jail for a little bit. They were actually in jail when they turned themselves in. They were in jail at that period of time, but they were released in December of 2002.
All right. Who is Nicole Lopez?
She is the first person you mentioned, David Noel. That's his older sister, and she was a listed victim/witness because of her age. She was older, so she testified in the case as well.
Okay. A question they asked her. It said, you mentioned Issa Johnson. Who is he? She said he's Kathy Johnson's oldest son. Doc had a minibus called a Zimmer. It was similar to a school bus, more like a deluxe bus. So Doc used to hang out there and sometimes call people in. So one day I was walking by on my way to work, and he called me in, and Issa was already there with him. It was during the day, but it had tinted windows, so it was dark inside. Who called you inside? Nicole Lopez. Doc, also known as Malachi York. He sat me down and started taking off my panties and motioned to me to start giving him oral sex. And that led to vaginal sex, and Issa Johnson was there watching us. How old was Issa at the time? Nicole Lopez, I'm not sure, 9, 10, or 11 years old. Did the defendant ever say anything to you as to why he would have sex with different people in groups or with boys? At times, he would talk about younger boys. He'd comment to us about how if you start with them when they're younger, it helps them develop. Sometimes he would say that stuff he likes to watch. Sometimes he would tell us that in countries like Sudan, they would have a room with a bunch of men and young boys doing things sexually. He showed a video where Tibetan boys were having oral sex with older men. When he talked about it, it varied. Now, let me ask you this. Nicole testified in the federal church. That's federal testimony, right?
That's true, correct.
All right. Let's move on to somebody else here. Salam LaRoche. They asked Salam a question. Salam, did Dr. York ever explain to you why it was okay for him to be doing these kinds of acts to you and Issa? Salam LaRoche, no. Did he ever talk to you about Egyptian gods and stuff? Yes. Tell the jury what he told you about that. Salam LaRoche. He said that the gods like Osahen and them used to have sex with each other. I'm not even going to read any much more. But my whole thing is, with the testimony, did the Nuwaubians ever hear these type of testimony from these guys, from the trial?
No, because the trial transcripts, well, I should say the bulk of Nuwaubians, no, they haven't, because the trial transcripts were under seal. So, and then that's a real big issue. That's a very confusing issue, because what happens is the trial itself was an open trial. It was a public trial. And people are under the assumption that the trial was closed and it was private, and that's just not true. The trial was open and it was public, and the judge allowed 50 spectators to watch the trial, to watch every bit of the trial. So any 50 persons could come in and watch the entire trial. It just so happens that we made up those 50 people, but anybody from the street could have actually sat in and watched the trial, up to 50 in number. So what happened is a lot of people that were there present, or those that were there present, were taking notes for every step of the trial. You know, they were taking shorthand notes. Some people knew shorthand, so they were able to take very good notes and, transcribe it into longhand later. So there was just a few people, up to 50 people, that actually saw the trial at any given time. And the trial lasted 14 days. 3 weeks, but 14 actual days, not counting the weekends. So that's just to give you a number, a view of the numbers of people that were aware of that kind of testimony. But outside of that, most Nuwaubians didn't hear any of the testimony or read about it, because the transcripts are under seal.
Okay, I think that's one of the things that's helping him to are giving people doubt. Let me ask you this: Did Dr. York have a criminal history as far as, did he ever molest, or was he ever arrested for statutory rape of a minor or a girlfriend or anything back in the days?
Yeah, he was charged and pled guilty with statutory rape. This was when he was 18. And the female was younger. I forget her age. I don't have the paperwork in front of me. But he was charged and convicted for that. So that's
okay.
True. That was on the record.
So he does have a record to deal with minors. Let me ask you this. Also, does he have a record as far as anything else? As far as I heard about he was arrested, I think, back in the 80s for possession of false identification. He tried to defraud the government. He was attempting to use a fake birth certificate as identification to get a passport and change his name or identity. Is that something that you're familiar with?
Yeah, and that's interesting you bring that up, because that's something that was used in court in the legal case, the current legal case that was mentioned, and yes, he was convicted, and he pled guilty and was convicted or sentenced in 1988 with a charge of falsifying documents with intent to defraud the U.S. government. And the documents that were involved were birth certificates and other identifying documents where he attempted to get his name changed. And the thing is that the backdrop behind that is that during this time, Dr. York and the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, as it was known at that time, or the Ansarullah at that time, was under attack by a person named Bilal Phillips, who was a Muslim who wrote a book called Ansar Cult in America. And Dr. York wanted to rebuttal that book, and he was working on a rebuttal book to refute the different things that Bilal Phillips said in his book. And one of the things was dealing with Dr. York's Sudanese connection or blood link and family and so on and so forth. So prior to the Ansar Cult rebuttal book, which was Dr. York's book, being published, he wanted to legally change his name from Dwight York to Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. And in order to do so, he didn't want to go through the process and the time it takes to change your name. You have to list your name in the newspapers or some kind of legal organ of the city in which you live or the county, and wait, the duration of time, so on and so forth. So to bypass all of that, he went the passport route. and utilized a birth certificate of someone, a fictitious or of someone else. And long story short, he was arrested. There was another person with him. It was two people, Dr. York and one other person, were detained and arrested. And Dr. York ended up pleading guilty and was sentenced. Now, also, this is just for the benefit of any Nuwaubians listening in, the lawyer that handled that for Dr. York back in 1988 was Jonathan Marks. And his name comes up again in Dr. York's current legal situation when Jonathan Marks was brought back in to help Dr. York with these current issues. So that's how Jonathan Marks was known. You know, that's how Nuwaubians knew about Jonathan Marks. It was from this 1988 case with his conviction. So that's what that was about.
Beautiful. I have a document in front of me from the newoptimism.com website. It says at the bond hearing, in Eatonton by Bill Osinski, the child molestation case against Nuwaubian leader Dwight York escalated Monday in state and federal court. In Eatonton, a Putnam County grand jury issued a 116-count indictment of the 56-year-old leader of the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, whose 150 to 200 members lived in a rural compound and whatever. York was charged with 74 counts of child molestation, 29 counts of aggravated child molestation, and related charges, including 1 count of rape. In Macon, an FBI agent testified at a bond hearing in U.S. District Court that authorities have identified as many as 35 victims whose age at the time of the alleged crimes ranged from 4 years old to 18. York is in federal custody after being arrested Wednesday by FBI agents in Baldwin County as an army of federal and local officers swooped down on the compound. York's associate, Kathy Johnson, who was arrested with him on the federal charges, also was named in 5 counts of the state indictment. 3 other members of the Nuwaubian group identified as Chandra Lamkin, Khadijah Merritt, and Esther Cole were indicted on state charges of child molestation. Now, I want everybody to listen to this carefully. Now, at 56 years old at the time, he is now probably 68, 69 years old, almost 70. All right? I want everybody to listen to what I'm reading right now. And this is we have to read and we have to understand what's going on here. Fred Bright, District Attorney for the Judicial Court that includes Putnam County, said the state indictment accuses York of molesting at least 5 children repeatedly and in just about every way imaginable. The indictments crown a 4-year investigation by the FBI and the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. It began, listen to this carefully, ladies and gentlemen, it began when a local social service agency received anonymous allegations that children were being sexually abused at the Nuwaubians' 400-acre ranch. York and the Nuwaubians have frequently criticized Putnam County authorities for what they contend is racial discrimination and harassment. Assistant District Attorney Dawn Baskin said there were no ulterior motives to the state charges. There's nothing political about child molestation, she said. All the alleged crimes were committed at the Nuwaubian compound, Bright said. FBI agent Jelaine Ward testified at the bond hearing in federal court in Macon regarding the scope of the government's case against York. York said to have ruled with iron hands. The government has statements from approximately 15 witnesses who testified that York sodomized and had sexual intercourse with children. Ward testified. In some of these encounters, the acts were photographed and videotaped, she said. The agent's testimony depicted a long-standing pattern of York's having sex with children within his community. The incident started at his group's bases in New York and continued after the set moved in 1993 to Putnam County Farm. Now, this is where the Mann Act come in. When he moved from one place to another in the alleged acts that make this case a federal matter. during an estimated 7 to 10 trips to Disney World in Florida over the past 4 years, investigators say. York controls everything that goes on at the compound, Ward said, summarizing witnesses' descriptions of life at the former cattle ranch, which the Nuwaubians have decorated with Egyptian-style pyramids and statuary. In some Nuwaubian literature, York is called the group's savior or God. Now, let me ask you this, man. Let me ask you this. If the federal and those people have all this stuff, and by the way, I noticed something that I never heard before. They said they had pictures and video. He used to take pictures and videotape. Hold on, let me see if I could find the actual statement that I just read. In some of the encounters, the acts were photographed and videotaped, she said. What about that? I never heard that before. What's going on with that?
Yeah, that was stated. That was stated in the case. But there were no videotapes or photographs of any of the acts brought forward and put into evidence, because the testimony of some of the witnesses was that it was destroyed.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just read the what came out of the grand jury and all that stuff. Did it surprise you as a Nuwaubian when you first heard about the case? This is a man who you grew under and you loved, I assume. How did you feel when you first heard about the charges?
Well, doing my best to put my mind back then, in that period of time, we were coming off of a long battle from 1999, dealing with the planning and zoning. We were involved with a civil battle with planning and zoning, dealing with the land, dealing with the buildings, dealing with the zoning, the rezoning, and things like that. So we were kind of numb to this opposition between the town's officials and the sheriff's office and so on and so forth. So, back then we were kind of numb to that. We were used to it. It was just an ongoing battle. Whenever we would hear something, it was like, oh, they're at it again, that type of thing. So this is where everybody's mind was. So when May 8th happened, when Dr. York was arrested, now mind you, he wasn't arrested on the land, but when he was arrested, it was shocking. But at the same time, it was, the period of time, it seemed like a continuation of what we were already dealing with. Obviously he wasn't arrested before, but we were in and out of courts dealing with the civil matters, with the zoning issues, like I said. So this seems like, a continuation, to put like a icing on whatever it is that they were trying to do. So we kind of linked everything together. And this is why Nuwaubians, even on your last show, this is why Nuwaubians will always refer to the planning and zoning and kind of tag it on to these criminal issues, even though they're completely separate and they don't have anything to do with one another. But I'm saying this is what goes on in the mind. So when you ask me, yes, it was shocking. It was shocking, and when it happened, also the kind of the feeling that people had or that we had was that we were gonna get out of it. Like it was basically something that we can handle, that we're gonna win, and it's not gonna take us too long, and so on and so forth, because, like I said, we were used to dealing with the planning and zoning issues. That's all we were able to judge it by. So, hopefully that kind of answers your question. That puts it back into that time frame.
All right, let's move on. So basically, you were like an inside guy in a sense, not an inside guy as far as his tight inside people who we had, but you helped out a lot because you're very talented when it comes to videotaping and recording and all that type of stuff. That's your type of stuff that you're very, very good at. Now, seeing that you are part of the Dr. York's team in a sense, as far as helping him with the defense and putting out a public, do you regret anything that you have said in the past seen that you know the whole full scope of the case?
No, I don't. I got involved with the case because I was asked by Dr. York to help. He asked for my help personally. And just to kind of back up, just to give a brief little history about that. When the case first happened, this was in May of 2002. When that first happened, I was living on land, obviously, and everything took place and went down. Now, I wasn't involved with the case intimately at that point. A lot of us weren't. It was only a very, very small few people that were dealing with the case. Because, like I said, the way everything happened, we were under the assumption that this was going to pass over, that this is something that we're going to win, and this is only a temporary thing, and it's not a big deal. That was on the minds of all of us at the time. So a lot of us, we weren't involved with the case. There was only a very handful of people that were very close to Dr. York, including his sister, one of his daughters, and some other people that were very, very close. Just a very small circle of people that were dealing with it. And we were just getting updates from them, or we would go to all the hearings, all of the court hearings and witness the hearings themselves. But as far as being updated on a day-to-day, play-by-play, we were being updated by these very few people. So I didn't get involved in the case until Dr. York, until it started becoming serious, until people actually realized how serious it was. And long story short, Dr. York asked, for help of a few people. I was one of them, and then I got involved. So, I just wanted to kind of lay that backdrop and background with that. So, reacting to your question, what were you asking me? I know I was trying to get a backdrop to lead up to.
Do you regret anything that you have said? You said no to that,
right.
You said
yeah, exactly.
So you were like a crusader for Dr. York. In other words, you were part of the organization. You were trying to help him get out. So there's a lot of information at the time that you had that made you a supporter of York. Am I correct as far as the case is concerned?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was leading up to. I was going to say, when I got involved with the case and I started to see all of the documentation and actually deal with the lawyers and was privy to the actual documents and what was being said and so on and so forth, and Dr. York saying that he was innocent. He's saying that he's innocent. None of these things are true. I need your help. And that's basically what I did. I helped him out. I began to help him out. So you asked me, do I have any regrets? No. None at all. I jumped in, helped him based on the information that was provided, based on the information that was available at the time, and so on and so forth. There was a lot of things that you can use to cast a reasonable doubt, because in criminal cases, the prosecution's job is to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. That's the burden. That's the burden that the prosecution has. And to me, it was a matter of me helping and to assist him. He was saying he's innocent and things aren't true. So this is what you do. You ask to help. You do your best to help.
Did at any time while you were helping Dr. York, you said to yourself, this was before you saw the evidence. At any time at the beginning in May 2002, you said, did you ever say to yourself, he could have did this?
No, not at the time. Not at the time, because you have, what your listeners need to understand as well, and I'll be brief as possible again, is that the way that the Nuwaubian organization is, especially those who live on the land and were very close, close to headquarters, as I put it, it's a family-oriented organization. Everyone knows each other. Everyone's very close. They're either related, by blood, or just very close friends, grew up with each other, and so that's the kind of environment that there is. So when the allegations came, when York was arrested and everything, the people that accused him of these acts were either his ex-mate or children of his ex-mates, his ex-wives or people that he has children with. So when you're in that environment, you're looking at it as though someone is disgruntled and want to pay him back, and they would make up these lies against him to pay him back, for either breakup, because when you're married to someone and you break up, a lot of breakups are not cordial. They you get bitter. A lot of breakups are very hard and disastrous. So when you're in an environment, this is what you're looking at. This is the lens that you're looking at all these things take place. You're looking at these several women and their children or whatever accusing him of these things as payback, as something, to pay him back. A woman scorned. You know how they say hell had no fury like a woman scorned. So this is the lens that we were looking at it back then, and some people still do to this day. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
All right, I'm not going to ask you throughout the program if Dr. York is guilty or not. I'm not going to ask you that, but I would like for you to tell me. If at any time at all, once evidence mounted up and you saw the evidence and certain things got revealed to you, did you say to yourself, this seems like a losing battle? I'm not saying that you're saying that he's guilty, but I'm trying to give you the opportunity to see, so the audience can see how close you were to the situation. And between 2002 and what was his last appeal? 2009, around that time period?
Oh, the appeal? Well, he had things
appeal that he had.
Yeah, well, there were
things after you left.
The appeal.
All right, cool.
Well, after I left,
all right,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So at any time at all, from 2002 onward, did you ever say to yourself that this is a losing battle as far as they're going to find him guilty? Not saying that he's guilty, but based on what you saw or the evidence, you're like, I don't think he's going to beat this.
Well, okay, let me answer this way. It wasn't necessarily about evidence when I viewed things in that way. It was the way in which the case was being handled by him and the people that he chose to have involved and help him out. There were several times where there were things that were done and projects that were worked on where I said, hey, this is a losing battle. This is not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not an issue, and so on and so forth. So there were several times when that came across my mind. Not to, it doesn't even speak to evidence whatsoever. I'm just talking just on the actual work or the efforts that were being done. There was a lot of bad decisions made, and there was a lot of incompetency involved, where people were not skilled at doing what they were doing, but they were sincere and they loved Dr. York and they want to help as much as they can, but they're really not qualified to help or what have you. But yet they're doing what they can, and it's just a shortcoming. So there was plenty of times where that took place where I said, hey, that's gonna damage things, and it's not gonna work. It's gonna hurt Dr. York, and there were several times where that took place. So we can go through some, but just as a summary, the answer is yes. But it had nothing to do with evidence.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to some of this stuff. Some of this stuff that I read and testify how Dr. York had young boys sucking on his dick and all this nasty shit. I mean, did you ever say to yourself, this nigga is crazy? What the hell is going on? And the first time, I'm gonna be honest, man. The first time I heard about it, I'm like, Dr. York could have never did nothing like that, because I'm back from the 90s as a kid when they were in Brooklyn. So, I mean, I used to work at Windward's Collide where the Brooklyn Mosque for the NOI is. I used to work out there, take jiu-jitsu and all type of karate stuff. I used to be there on Friday night for lecture series, with some of the greats used to come through, Barashanga and a couple others, and that you might be familiar with. But I mean, in Brooklyn, I used to see them all the time. I used to buy the books, 360 Questions, Ask the Christians. And, I mean, if you go in my garage at my aunt's house where I used to live, I got tons of Dr. York's books. Now, one of the things that drawed me to him was that I was around the NOI, and he used to speak bad about the NOI. So there was like a little rift between them. And, sometimes you hear things about, Elijah or Farrakhan, and, you love those people, and you're like, damn, why he say that? And Master Farad Muhammad, and it seems like he got a lot of fans based on his disrespect of the information that Elijah Muhammad draw. But yet still later on, he would say that he got visions from Elijah. Elijah told him this and that, and I couldn't understand the man. So I looked at him as a hustler, because as a Jamaican, I'm used to these type of cats, that say that they're messianic or God sent them. I always tell the story about Bedouin in Jamaica. Everybody said that he could fly, and he said he was a Messiah returning to God, and he went on a roof to try and fly, and you know what happened when he jumped off the roof. I don't even need to tell you. You know what I'm saying? But today in Jamaica, people are saying that the brother could fly. Orally, it's been passed on for years. My mom is a history teacher. She told me about Bedouin. You know what I'm saying? And of course, my mother is my first God in my life. So of course, anything my mother says, I'm gonna take it as it is. But she was just basically telling me that the tradition exists. Because I didn't understand as a kid what she was trying to tell me. But the tradition exists that he used to be able to fly, but we know it's BS. So now when we hear stuff like Dr. York is in jail levitating and all this craziness, I'm like, this is like another Bedouin here to me. So I had a feeling that the dude was fake. I'm not even going to go into the teachings, because the teachings, we're going to address it probably next week or the week after. His teachings and all that stuff. We could go over some of the teachings that was everybody hold as the truth, but we never heard certain things that he brought. So sometimes when somebody brings something like, oh, he got knowledge, but it could be BS, but you don't know because you never try to verify it. So now you start worshiping this man. A lot of people, for example, for me, a lot of people see information I bring and they look at me like I'm a little god, because I bring a lot of information they don't know. So they start following me on Facebook. They send me friend requests, and I'm like, why you said, who am I? All you got to do is research for yourself. You don't need Garfield. You're just being lazy. And I think a lot of the people with the Nuwapians were just lazy to investigate the things that he said. What do you think about all of this stuff, man?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, like you said, that's a whole show to talk about the doctrine and the process of how people learn the doctrine. And the thing is, the doctrine doesn't teach you how to research. It just basically makes the statement. Dr. York is known for the famous statement of "Don't believe me, check it out." But at the same time, he doesn't teach you how to check things out. He doesn't teach you research methodology. He doesn't teach you scientific methods based upon whatever subject matter or field of study that you're investigating on how to apply those things. So he's known for saying, "Don't believe me, check it out," but there's no step-by-step or systematic way of teaching. Right? There's no way of that. It's absent or void of him actually teaching you how to actually go through that process. So a lot of people don't check things out because there's a level of trust that is gained at the start, and then you kind of just drop your guard, so to speak, and you just start accepting things, because once somebody is right a few times, then you tend to just lean their way and say, okay, well, hey, and then as time goes on, you just simply accept things based on whatever's said. So with the absence of knowing how to investigate and then just gaining a level of trust and loyalty, people are actually the opposite of what Nuwapu is described to be. Nuwapu is supposed to be a science, the science of sound right reasoning, and Nuwapians are supposed to be scientists dealing with this science. But yet the behavior and the mentalities are quite the opposite. And then, and I say this, I don't mean for every single Nuwapian, but for the majority, the character of the organization is the opposite. But like I said, that's a whole show within itself to deal with doctrine. But to kind of bring it to the case, this is the same mentality dealing with the case as well. You know, you got people who will just accept anything and don't check it out. They don't know how to check it out, and they just accept things. They would just repeat things and parrot things. And like how you said in Jamaica, where things are repeated over the years, and then people to this day will still believe something. This is what's going on in the Nuwaubian community, among Nuwaubians themselves. Things were repeated so many times that it's become law. It's become true, and it's not. So a person like me to come along and say, hey, that's not true, this is what it really is, then I become the bad guy, you know. So, and me knowing that, you know, it's okay, but that's how it happens. That's how things happen. And you can see that on your previous shows where you have people that are trying to make me a bad guy, you know, but they haven't done anything remotely near what I've done to help Dr. York, but yet I'm a bad guy. And just to let you know, I know the brother's not on the phone. I don't know if he's calling in or you plan to bring him on. But the brother from the last show, Isa El Maski, as his name is on Facebook. After that show, I don't know if you even saw this, Garfield, but after that show, he started doing ad hominem attacks. He called me a snake, an agent, a snake Negro, and, you know, all these different derogatory terms and so on and so forth. And, you know, stuff like that doesn't bother me. But it just shows the mentality when people can't deal with what you're saying or refute what you're saying with factual information, then they resort to this immature, you know, back and forth. And I don't get down like that. So, you know, I didn't respond to the brother's remarks. I just deal with the information.
Okay. Let me ask you this. This is a question from the Nuwaubianism's website. He said, ask the Nuwaubians how many victims still deny sexual abuse. The answer, Nuwaubians might not know why this question is being asked. Nuwaubians claim to build their knowledge on experience, evidence, and reason. All right. Now, hold on a second. Let me see. Here are the victims and their status now. So when you look at all the victims, let me count here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So out of these 22 people here, I think all of them are saying, except I think one of them, are saying that they were abused by Dr. York. Their status right now.
Right.
Because some of them testified in court supporting, saying Dr. York never did anything. But on the other hand, now they're saying, yes, he did. Why?
Right.
Why? But in the public, though, it's saying that the people recanted. But I think they're saying they recanted, the wrong ones recanted. The ones who supported Dr. York recanted and saying, hell yeah, he's a damn molester. And I think whoever is his campaign manager, and I'm going to call him his campaign manager, they're doing an excellent job. They need to go work for Hillary Clinton or somebody big in politics because they are doing a beautiful job at letting Dr. York look innocent. Because you know what, Brother Anpu, if somebody would read the testimony, they're like, why would somebody make this up? And they saying they got it from a social services call, a phone call. Because remember, they're saying that Dr. York's son, Jacob, is the one that started the foolishness. But the truth of the matter is they got a call, because I'm an ex-social worker, so I'm very familiar with how that works. How when you call in anonymously sometimes and make an allegation, they have to find evidence and search. And they were looking for 4 years. They had to build a case that was unheard of. You know what I'm saying? I mean, with the Mann Act is still has to do with molestation. He's not serving time for molestation 135 years, but the molestation is in the Mann Act. So technically speaking, he is serving time for molestation. So they like to say, there's no molestation here. What was the Mann Act used for? Saying that he was basically fucking kids, if they really want to be blunt about it. He was fucking kids and transporting them from out of state and going to Florida at Disney World and doing all type of nasty shit with them and back and forth, transporting kids out of state, in and out of state. So that's why they use the Mann Act, because that's the only provision they had in federal court system to actually prosecute the guy under this molestation stuff, because the sexual molestation is not in the federal provisions that they have as far as statutes. So they had to improvise, basically, and they improvised very well, and they got this guy. He's now 70 years old. Is he having any health issues, by the way, that you know of?
Yeah, well, even when I was visiting him, he suffers from a condition called angioedema, which in a nutshell is the swelling. He breaks out in hives. It's almost like an allergy, where you get an allergic reaction, and stress and different things can trigger it. But he's, your skin swells, your esophagus can swell, and you could suffocate. As far as your trachea and breathing, so your breathing can be taken from you, and so he does suffer from that. That's what's on record, and that's what I do know for sure. But then as an aging person, there may be some other things that he may be going through that I'm not definitive about. Other than just the normal dental work or eye exams and eyeglasses and vision and stuff like that. But outside of that, he definitely has a condition of angioedema.
And again, ladies and gentlemen who's listening, either way, whether you're for Dr. York or against him, it's pretty important to at least know what was said at trial. Talk to somebody, listen to my shows. I'm going to have a show next week. We're going to talk probably about some more about the case, or we're going to get into the doctrine. By part 6, I want to talk about the doctrine, because a lot of people hold on to Dr. York because of the doctrine and what he taught. Stop being lazy, black people. We need to stop being lazy and go and research for ourselves. Stop being lazy, and if you don't know, ask somebody who knows. Now, let me see what else is going on here. Another thing I want to say, he pleaded.
Let me just comment on what you said before about the listed victims and the recampments. And this is something that's prevalent among the Nuwaubians is propaganda, misinformation propaganda. And for a long time, people are repeating and parroting and saying that, hey, there are several recampments. There's a lot of people who recanted their testimony, and they're using this as supporting statements to the overall umbrella that he's innocent. They'll say he's innocent, and you say, well, why? How you know he's innocent? Then they'll say, well, we have a lot of recampments, and we have this, that, and other. So recampments is one of the things that they're saying, and it's just simply not true. There are no recampments in the case, absolutely none. And there was an attempted recampment by Habiba Washington. She was the only one who actually attempted to recant and actually filed an affidavit in court to recant. And then when it came time for her to support that recantment, she didn't go forward with it. She, because when you file an affidavit, the other side, in this case it would be the government, they have a chance to cross-examine, and you have to be sworn under oath in court, and you have to back up whatever that you're saying. And she didn't do that. She actually went backwards and said, hey, my trial testimony was actually true, and my attempted recantment is the false thing. That's where I lied. So at the end of the day, there are absolutely no recampments whatsoever. But like how you brought up, even the listed victims who at the time of trial in 2004, who testified in favor of Dr. York, saying that nothing happened to them, they are now saying that their trial testimony was a lie and that they really were molested. Every single one of them. There are 18 people who were listed as victims who testified, and out of those 18, 17 at this date and time are saying that they really were molested. And they even go on to say why they lied at trial. Now, mind you, these are Dr. York's witnesses who actually testified in his favor at one point in 2004. But since then, this is like 11 years from that point. Within this 11-year period, they have now, matured, got older, and so on and so forth. They're saying that they lied at trial, and some of them have different reasons for why they lied, but they've come forward and said this stuff publicly, and a lot of it was even said on Facebook, starting with Dr. York's stepson, Issa Johnson, wrote a poem a few years back, and that opened up a big can of worms for all of these different issues, and the Nuwaubians started to attack him, and then everybody else came in Issa's defense, and this is when all this information started coming out. I mean, people that you haven't heard from in years came to Issa's defense and started, speaking about these issues. So it's a matter of the public now at this point. But I just want to touch on that's an example of the delusion that's created and how Nuwaubians are moving forward based on misinformation and delusion and are delusional instead of operating on, from a point of facts and seeing what they can really do to help him if they can help him, So, I just wanted to kind of touch on that.
It's a lost cause, man. The dude, he's not coming out of jail. He's not coming out of jail. I'm sorry, Nuwaubians. This guy's not coming out of jail. There's no way a man who is as divine and who is inspired, as many like to claim, would be involved in anything like this. If it said that he had sex with young children, 16, 18, you know what I'm saying, it would be a different situation. But to come out to plainly be a part of a situation where we know that there's evidence out there. There's nothing anybody can do to help him at this point. I think personally it's a lost cause. I think they should give up. Dr. York is in jail. He is Dwight York, and he's not floating around. If he has the power to float around and he's connected to Planet Riz or whatever, why they don't break him out? Why they didn't warn him before the police came and arrested him, so he could go in hiding, or give him a hint, something's going on. There's nothing divine about this man. He is to me, based on what I have read and I've seen, I'm taking the children's side, and it's sad that people in society today quick to love this man, worship him, and just say, hey, all these children are liars without even questioning them. A lot of Nuwaubians I've noticed have questioned the victims and their minds have changed. And I think I wish I could get a couple of the victims on so they could just speak their mind. That's probably what would be best for episode number 10. If I could get a couple of those victims, man, to come on and talk, it'd be a wrap. You don't need to say no more, oh, they're lying. How you know they're lying? They're the ones that testified against him.
That's the thing. What happens is all the things you just said, the average Nuwaubian will have some kind of response to what you say, even if it doesn't make sense. They will have a response to it because there's a situation where you have cognitive dissonance going on, where people have to make up something to justify whatever it is they believe. And the thing is what happens is if you were to say that Dr. York is guilty, the first thing that you would be asked is, well, how do you know? Were you there? Did you actually see him perform these acts on somebody? And, you have to say, no, you weren't. But when it comes to the listed victims, they can't say those same things. They're the ones who saying these things happened to them personally, or that they, not only personally, but they watched it happen to others personally. So not only are they listed victims, but they're also witnesses to it happening to other people. So when they say it, a Nuwaubian can't say, how do you know? Were you there? Because obviously they were, because they're saying that it happened to them. So then another set of statements are created for those kind of situations, and it really boils down to them calling them liars. They're just saying, hey, you're lying, and then they make up, say, hey, you're doing it for money, or you're doing it for whatever else. And, no one ever investigates or actually tries to find out what is true and what's not true. These are just blanket statements that people keep repeating to kind of keep things moving and keep up with the beliefs and stuff like that. So you're right. If any of the listed victims were to come on your show and able to say what they say, there's really nothing that a Nuwaubian can say other than you're lying. That's really what it all will have to boil down to. You're lying. I don't believe you, type of thing. But they cannot explain why they were lying or make sense. Like, for example, I said there were people who testified for Dr. York who were listed as victims who said nothing happened to them. So they testified on Dr. York's behalf. But now they're saying that they lied at trial. But the Nuwaubians don't even attempt to explain that. They don't attempt to explain how is it that these people testified in favor of York in 2004, but now they're saying that he really did those things. Why? Why did they change their mind? Why? What's the explanation? The Nuwaubians don't attempt to explain that because the diversion is made to say, hey, we got recantments and they talk about other things, but they don't address it. And this is not a good look. These things have to be covered and accounted for when you're going to champion that Dr. York is innocent. Everything has to make sense.
I have a question for you, my brother. We are an hour into the show, and we're going to lock this off tonight, like around, I think, 9:30. So we got like another hour and a half if you're up to it. And time goes by so fast, man. Yeah,
that's fine. Because usually when I answer questions, I'm trying to be real quick. But hey, if I got time to answer, we can talk about whatever,
time, my brother. Take your time.
I'm trying to be fast.
610. Yes, sir. 610-800. Caller, what's your name and what state are you calling from?
Peace. This is Gab. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Gab? What's going on, black man?
What's up, man?
All right. What's up, man? Ask your question away, brother. Ask your question away, beloved.
I got a few things. Being, I was in the Nuwaubian for over 12, 13 years. And, I didn't want to accept anything that was said against Dr. York. It's like Brother Anpu just said, that anytime you'll question the nation or anybody in the nation, they will say, well, how did you know? Was you there? And for me, that was like giving me the impression that there was something else going on, because we was always raised up as questioning everybody, and truth is truth. So when they start to react towards the questions in that manner, it led me to do my own research. And I don't know if Brother Anpu remember, I don't know if he was involved in the Project Rise Up. Were you involved in the Project Rise Up?
No,
remember it?
Yeah, I remember it, but I was not involved with it. I wasn't involved with anything that was based on incompetency. So I just want to let you know I do remember it, and I was around for it, but I wasn't involved with it. I didn't go to Washington, D.C. when the trip was made and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, I remember that.
Well, I went there in support of the whole thing about supporting the nation and everything, Dr. York. But it was some strange things going on there. It was people speaking on behalf of Dr. York that I've never seen before. Never seen him around ever. And there was some other things going on with the people that's inside the nation. My question is, how did you feel about after Dr. York was incarcerated for a few years, and the new people the administration start to rise up as far as the new tribal leader and the Sister Nifu Amohotep, who was Bastet, and the brother Damian Pryor, who was York, became the ambassador. For me, that's what did it. It was just too many things going on. People was just becoming these titles, and no one was questioning it.
Right. So you asked me how I feel about all that?
Yeah. Did you know anything about anything going on?
Yeah. That's that went on a lot. That was going on constantly, where people were gaining different titles and positions of limited authority and so on and so forth. And it's mainly if you were spearheading a project that could potentially help Dr. York, then you were given some kind of title, and you were given basically a limited form of authority or power because you were spearheading a particular project. So, you know, that went on constantly where people would pop in and write Dr. York and come up with an idea, and Dr. York, being in a situation that he's in, he's going to accept anything that sounds good in his mind. He's going to latch onto full-fledged and run with it, because if you're at this point, if you're facing 135 years, that's a death sentence. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. So anybody that comes to you with a seemingly good idea, then you're going to go for it. So that's what happens. And people write him and come up with these ideas or somehow get information to him, then he will start paying attention to you and focus on you. And then later on, you may receive a title or what have you. So that's basically how it happens. And a lot of people have done that. And it's like a revolving door where you have this person in the limelight, and then next thing you know, you don't hear anything from them. Then another person comes in the limelight, so this rotated. Now, me personally, I have a list of titles that I was given, but I never used them because I wasn't about titles, and then I knew I knew the process of how all that works, and I wasn't dealing with that, and it doesn't do any good, So I didn't use any of those titles or any of that. I was just helping Dr. York as far as when I was involved. Full stop. I was helping Dr. York. I was updating the community, the family, and everything, and informing people and teaching them about the facts of the case. I didn't come. Right. I was visiting Dr. York 2 and 3 times a week, and then it became once a week or once a month when he moved further away. And I would come back and update the family. That was it. I didn't claim the titles or claim power or whatever. So that's what makes me laugh when people say, hey, the reason why he left, the reason why Brother Anpu left is because Dr. York stripped him of his power and took this. I laugh at that because I was never about that and everything. So, so as far as how I feel about it, to me, it hurt Dr. York's case because people get caught up into these titles and caught up into who's up front. Not everybody, but some people get caught up in that. And it may not even be the people who are up front. It's the fight to be up front that becomes a diversion. And then people just come up with these ideas just because they sound good and they're not well researched. They don't investigate things very well. And then it grows legs. And, I can name them. Like, for example, the entire Colorado case that was filed by different Nuwaubians trying to get him transferred from Colorado back to Georgia or whatever, medical transfer. Mm-hmm. That entire process, how it went down, everything was completely incompetent. It wasn't researched well. It didn't follow procedures. A lot of things were filed into the case, frivolous paperwork. People trying to, even as recent as I believe 2014. I believe people are trying to file paperwork to pay a ransom or pay a bond to get Dr. York. They feel like if they pay money, that he can get out. So these are the kind of things that goes on, So it doesn't surprise me, and like I said, that really hurt him. All throughout his case, that hurt him. I was never involved with any of that. I saw it. I spoke against it. I tried to advise people, but you got to remember, when somebody loves, like Dr. York is loved. I mean, a lot of people love him. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people love him for multiple reasons, and people are loyal to him. So when they come up with an idea and they want to help, then they lock on to that and they mean it. So when a person like me comes even to them and say, "Hey, your idea is not going to work, man," or whatever, then I'm looked at as a demon even on that level. So so like, for example, there's different projects where I come in, I'm like, whatever. And then people are like, well, hey, you sound like the prosecution. You sound like you taking the government side. I'm like, no, do you play chess? When you play chess, you have to anticipate the opponent's move, not their current move, but moves like 9 moves ahead. So you have to play it out. You have to cover all your bases, line all your ducks in a row. That's a better strategist to do that. But when you really do it, people get mad. So anyway, I don't want to be too long-winded with it, but that's how I feel about all of that stuff.
Well, yeah, because one last thing I wanted to mention, Kathy Johnson. I've noticed last week that every time that you talk, I felt the passion and the anger of the other Nuwapians that was on here, especially the sister. Like, she really didn't like you talking, or she had something personally against you.
Yeah, she doesn't know me, though.
Anything you can say, anything you say, she's going against, and that's how a lot of them act now. They became like a church, Christian church now. So that's the response you get. But one thing I wanted to mention about the Kathy John, her book, she had wrote a book called The Main Wife, and a lot of Nuwapians was slandering her and didn't even read the book. They were so scared of that book that they was putting all these different ideas in people's heads that it was slandering Dr. York. It was talking this and that, she's doing it for money, but they never even read the book. In that book, she really didn't say too much in that book. But that's how you can tell a lot of people were scared.
Yeah, and you're right. I witnessed that myself. When her book first came out, the Nuwapians got wind of it, and then people, just like you said, people didn't even get the book and read it. They automatically became very defensive and started attacking Kathy Johnson. They were saying that she's doing it for money. Now, this is what I mean by the mentality. This is, and the world watches this. Especially the legal professionals watch this, and they see the reaction that the Nuwapians have, and these are automatic, like programmed, almost robotic type responses that are expected, and nobody takes them serious. And this is why when Nuwapians say that Dr. York is innocent, to anybody outside of Nuwapian organization, that has no value because you're already supposed to say that. Just like if you have a relative who gets in trouble, the first thing a mother says is that, no, not my child. My child ain't gonna never do this, never do that. That's an automatic thing. You know what I'm saying? So when Kathy wrote her book, the first thing the Nuwapian said was, hey, she's slandering this and she's slandering that, she's doing it for money. Now, anybody in their right mind can go to Amazon, look at her book, and see how much it sells for. It sells for like $9.
$9.
Anybody knows? Yeah, $9 to $10 or whatever. It's very cheap. And anybody knows anything about publishing, it costs to actually print the book. Amazon is going to take their cut, and then it costs to print the book itself. So if she was really doing that for money, then that would be very crazy. She's not making anything off the book. And then the book is only but so many pages, and it was an introductory book.
That's it.
And once people actually read it, they realized that she's not doing what people think she's doing in the book. It doesn't go into any detail. It's a very brief synopsis of how she got into the organization. She goes backward. I'm sure you read it. She goes back into her life, how she met her former mate, actually the father of Issa Johnson, basically, and how she got involved with how she got involved with the organization, and how she met Dr. York. And that's really where the book ends. It's like an overview, and you could kind of sense that it's an introduction to something bigger.
Of course.
So maybe something else maybe coming down the pipe, but that book in particular, it didn't, Nuwapians were saying things that they didn't really know about. They didn't even read it. So, to me, it kind of just reveals the mentality of the people, and that hurts as well, because it lets you know that, okay, these people are not operating off of an unbiased, neutral state to kind of analyze the facts, the emotions, and everybody knows when you're emotional to something, it diminishes your judgment. Emotions cloud your judgment. This is why people, do things they regret, and they ended up in jail because they got emotional. Domestic violence, husbands beating their wives, and then next thing you know, they apologizing and stuff because of emotion. So,
thank you, brother.
Anyway,
appreciate y'all.
All right, no problem.
Hey, and thanks for the call, brother. You know what I'm saying? Let me put you back in the whole section. If you I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, if you want to ask another question, you could just hit me up on Facebook and I'll punch you right back in. You know what's important to me, man, is try to get the best information possible. And
right.
It seems some people just want, I don't know, black folks in general, we have this wait and see religious mindset that we're waiting for some Messiah to save us and so forth. So when these men come along, they always seem to attract us because they seem like they're bringing something that we never heard before or something special. And I think that we fall for this trap in saying that the God that you're looking for is within you. That eliminates somebody else. And that's what actually brought me to African culture, because a lot of African culture was more of you trying to elevate yourself. I mean, in all over Africa, they worship the external God. Don't get me wrong, but there are certain sects that defeated that whole concept, because when you look at yourself internally, you're trying to get personal responsibility for what you're doing, whether it's negative or positive. And, you know, to raise your higher consciousness is what human beings supposed to be doing. That's like me and you hanging out, and we make $100 on a deal, but you try to scam me out of $5 so you could get 55 and I get 45. You understand what I'm saying? But that's the lower self. You're operating on the lower self. So if individuals would think about themselves and look at these men as like how I could look at Jesus of the Bible, although I don't believe he's a historical figure. I could look at the Bible as him as a character that I would like to emulate or try to live upright, like how he's pretended to be in the Bible. So he's looked on in an allegorical sense, you know, because Krishna and Buddha also are looked on in that sense by many people. You know, saying that look at what they're doing. As human beings, we could attain to be a Buddha or a Krishna or Jesus by living a certain lifestyle, by living upright, by having that positive vibration. You know what I'm saying? Instead of we trying to look for external God and saying, oh, they're going to send a Messiah to teach us and all that stupidness, this is what's keeping us back, man. I'm telling you. If we never had no Quran or no Bible or nothing like that, Dr. York would have been another Bedouin. That's all he would be. Another flipping Bedouin from Jamaica. That's all he'd be. He wouldn't be nothing else. But instead, we keep falling for these guys. I'm the Messiah. I have this better knowledge. So, you know, this is what's going to happen.
Well,
I mean, come on.
Hey, that's real interesting that you bring it up, because that is part of what hurt Dr. York in this case. And I say that because Dr. York created an image of himself. He projected an image of himself to his followers and everything like that. And throughout this case, he chose to hold on to his image rather than fight and focus all resources and all efforts on his freedom. And I'm not sure. I think I hear noise in the background. I don't know if that's another caller or whatever.
Yeah, that's me. Don't worry about that. Is it too loud?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
No, I was just wondering. Okay.
Don't worry about it. Let me turn it off.
Okay. All right, so there's been multiple instances where Dr. York chooses to protect his image rather than to focus all efforts, all energy, all resources on his freedom. And this has been a major, major problem in any effort to help him. So a lot of things that he said in the doctrine, and this is why you almost can't separate the doctrine from the legal stuff, from the legal cases, because Dr. York has placed himself within his own doctrine as key characters in his doctrine, whether it's Melchizedek, whether it's Michael, whether it's Yanun, the 19th elder, whether it's Tahuti, an incarnation of Tahuti, whether it's Marduk in Marduk Gal or Marduk or Amar Utu, or, whatever the case is, these different characters within his doctrine. He placed himself in the doctrine at the source, at the center of it, being the only one qualified by the forces of nature to liberate our people, and only one like him comes every 25,920 years, which is a whole great processional year, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hard to separate the doctrine from the legal stuff, because we're dealing with a person who who imported himself into or projected himself into the doctrine. But I say that to say is that this image that he created for himself, as far as his doctrine goes, this is very important to him to maintain, and it was so important to him that he would neglect the legal stuff to protect that image. And this is what I saw on several occasions, where, and this is where you get the levitation in jail, 3 alien beings, Alamar, Saad, and Kirill coming to visit him in prison, and they're passing on messages to him ultimately to give to Nuwapians, and all these different things. I could list a bunch of other things. But a lot of stuff is done periodically to maintain his image, to kind of keep it going, to reignite these imageries and things in the minds of his followers. But and then, to write books, to write letters. You got the Potomac right now. You got the actual facts before that. And even before that, you had the Wu Nuwapu lessons or Wu Nuwapu degrees and studies. And then you got the name change things going on, where his name is Pa Yanun Nabab, or Pa Nabab Yanun, and then some other terms that go after that. Prior to that, it was different names and so on and so forth. The language itself called Nuwapic, how that goes through different changes. See, a lot of these things are done periodically to keep the people's mind and attention, so that nobody goes astray, because it's a flock of people. So I say that to say a lot of energy of his energy is done in that, and a lot of energy of his staff members is focused on that. So when it comes to the case and getting down to the nitty gritty, to the grind, a lot of things were neglected in this case. And when you asked me earlier, were there things that I saw that I just basically threw my hands up and was like, hey man, this is a losing battle or whatever? That's exactly what I'm talking about. When things like that occur, when he focused on his image rather than freedom, So that's just. That you bringing that up, it kind of goes right in hand with what happened in this case as well. And people eat into that. People eat into that, and it's only Nuwapians. It's only Nuwapians that deal with that. As a matter of fact, his lawyers, most of his lawyers have always told us to tell him, or they would tell him directly and let him know that, look, you have to give up your organization. And they were saying it in a way, not a negative way. They were saying it like, if you organize or structure your organization as well as you say you've done, then they were looking at it like, hey, I'm sure you have someone who can take charge and keep things going while you focus on your freedom. And they were telling him like, look, you need to focus on your freedom. You need to get involved with your own case and not worry about trying to control your organization from prison. Stop trying to control the people and stop trying to control the organization from prison, because that is going to hurt you. This is what his lawyers would tell him and what his lawyers would tell us to tell him, and just tell us. They were like telling us that, hey, you guys got to step up so that he don't have to worry about trying to control you guys or control the organization from prison, trying to write books and trying to do this instead of focusing on his freedom, because he was facing serious charges. And this is after he was convicted, all during the appellate process, the Supreme Court process, the 2255, which is, another process. And then you have the habeas corpus, and all the other different remedies were going on during this time. And they were constantly trying to tell him, stop focusing on controlling the people and the organization and focus on your freedom. So, so that kind of speaks to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, let me see if there's anybody else want to join the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to join the conversation, man, the number to call is 347-826-9457. That's 347-826-9457, 347-826-9457. You have 10 seconds to call in. If you're not in the queue, you're not going to hear the rest of the show. For those who are on the internet, the show is going to be off in 10 seconds. All right, so it's 347-826-9457, 347-826-9457. All right, let me get back to Brother Anpu right now. A lot of things that's disturbing in the case, and it's funny. People just want to just gloss over the fact that these are children's lives who will be affected for the rest of their lives. Who knows? Some might end up taking drugs. Some might end up being depressed. Some might just have the worst case of just being proud of who they are as individuals because of what has happened to them. And in those people, I'm very concerned about them, where they go from here, and it's a hurtful time period for them. Even though it's long gone, the case is over, he is in jail. There are still wounds that have not been healed, and that's a problem. That's definitely a problem.
Well,
I think we got to look on that and think about the children instead of ourselves for once. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I was just going to say that since Dr. York has been arrested, up until now, there's a whole decade that's gone by. So a lot of the people that were involved with the case, they have moved on, with their lives, and a lot of them, want to put things behind them and move on in a positive, progressive way. So a lot of them that I know of are actually doing very well. Some of them went on and got college degrees. They actually operating in the field that they got a degree in. Some of them actually became social service social service workers themselves, which covers, domestic abuse, domestic, violence, abuse, and stuff like that. So some of them have, moved on, but it still affects them, still has affected them. And this is a part of the case where restitution was brought up, where, a lot of people want to know what happened to all the money that Dr. York had, what happened to all the money that they seized, what happened to the selling of the land, what was used for that money and whatever. And people may forget that there were restitution orders, that Dr. York had to pay restitution, a large amount of money for restitution, over $500,000 in restitution for all the listed victims, to actually go through counseling, go through therapy, go through counseling and see. Oh, see
okay, went to the victims. Okay. The brother Gabe had another question, but finish what you're saying, and I'm punching right back in. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just saying that's what restitution was all about. It was supposed to be a way to rehabilitate anyone that was listed as a victim, to kind of integrate them back into society, because people, the doctrine, the organization was like a garden, a Garden of Eden, for lack of a better word, where you have this holy garden, and then everything on the outside was called the dunya, or the world. And so a lot of people were not used to just regular functioning in the so-called dunya, or the so-called world, because you have some of these people that are grown adults in their 30s or whatever now, and they're just getting their driver's license. Like, for example, Issa Johnson just got his birth certificate fairly recently, just got his birth certificate and an ID, a state ID and stuff like that, just recently. And I'm not exactly sure of his exact age right now, but, he's a grown adult, and he's just getting these things. You have sisters who never got a driver's license before, who are just learning to drive or get their driver's license and being able to drive. So there's a integration procedure that was that was available to people that was involved with the case. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that a lot of people want to move on. And when these issues come up, whether it's online or social media, a lot of them want to move on, but they address it because you can see the anger in them, because they're like, look, y'all don't know what you're talking about, because most Nuwaubians are new. Most Nuwaubians a lot of Nuwaubians never even met Dr. York that are with the organization now, and they're talking about things that they have no knowledge of. They weren't at the trial, they weren't at the case, they never attended any of the hearings. So they're just repeating stuff. And for the people who were involved with the case, sometimes you'll see them lash out. Sometimes you'll see them respond to different things, because it just gets ridiculous. So, but I just wanted to say that a lot of them help was available for them. Whether even the people who said that nothing ever happened, things were allocated for them as well.
That's very interesting. Hey, let's get Brother Geb in. Hey, Brother Geb, are you there, my brother?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, hold a second before you ask your question. Brother Anpu, you just said that money was allotted for the people that said that they weren't abused either? Wow.
Right.
That's interesting. That's
right.
Interesting, brother. That's very interesting.
Because let me just real quickly, the reason why is because the government had an expert witness testify any situation when you're dealing with rape and molestation, they had a expert witness expert person come in and testify about these kind of people who are victims of this kind of abuse, and how and why they would deny it at first, and the reasons for it, because of relationship, or they see them as a father figure, God figure, or whatever. So a lot of these things were explained that eventually these people will come around and start, as they mature, they will start to embrace what they were victimized of, and they will start coming to grips with it, and they're going to need rehabilitation. So this is why money was allocated for all of the listed victims, even if they testified on New York's behalf at the time. And what's interesting is that exactly what they said is exactly what happened. Like I said, 18 people testified who were listed as victims. During the trial, some of those people said that nothing happened. But now, as of today, all of them but one, that means 17 out of 18, are saying that they really were molested and that what they said at trial was wrong. So it actually pans out to what they said would happen. That's exactly what happened. But you said the brother had a question?
Yeah, Brother Geb, go ahead, man. Ask your question, my brother.
Thanks, brother. I had a question. Back in around like 1993 or somewhere near that year, there was a book, a constitution book, the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. For the Yamasee Native Americans, Creek Nations, and all that. What happened? Why did they stop using Moor? They took the Moor off the title and just used worldwide. What happened? You know what happened? Why they stopped using the title Moor?
Well, as far as what when you take it back that far, it was United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. You're speaking about the UNNM Constitution, right? It was the Black Book. Yeah,
the Black Book.
I don't know if you said 1993, but it was around 1998.
Well, I'm saying 93 because that was so-called when the Constitution was 215, 1993 was the
I got you.
number.
Right. Okay, yeah. You have the 1992. You had two numbers that was given, and those are and really and that's another thing. That's something that was focused on that was really a non-issue. That was a complete waste of time, in terms of his legal case, because those numbers, when you go to 215, 1993, and then 208, 2009 or whatever, those numbers are simply docket numbers of filings when you're filing information about trying to petition the Federal Bureau of not the FBI, but what is it called? The BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. When you are petitioning or corresponding to them and you file petitions in there, they assign a docket number, and the docket number is assigned the year that you did it, you filed it, and then a chronological number, a sequential number. That's all of what that number means. That's it. That's like going to court, pulling up a docket. Like for example, the document number where the government was authorized to take Dr. York's blood for STD testing is docket number 69 from the year 2002, July 29, 2002, docket number 69. So that's like taking that number and then making a big deal out of it. You see what I'm saying? You see how just it doesn't mean anything. So all those things, it had no meaning whatsoever. as far as the number and that's concerned. So as far as your question goes, why the stop of the use of the word more? The more was dropped off later, and one of the main reasons why was because of the discrepancies between Empress Verdiashi and her organization, and then what Dr. York was trying to do. Dr. York was trying to utilize her, the work that she's done over the years and decades, and Dr. York was trying to, basically put Nuwaubians into her work, and her organization didn't agree with those methods or that idea at all. So there was a conflict. There was a lot of conflicts with that going on. So then it was just dropped altogether. That's when you had the second number. Instead of the 215 1993, it became the 208 1999 number.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was done in 1999 for Dr. York himself. So that's to give you kind of like the backdrop and background, about that.
Oh man, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, brother. All right. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on specifically, because my questions are pretty much done. I mean, we asked a lot. We asked a lot thoroughly and straight to the point. I mean, there's tons of more questions I could probably dig up and find, but I don't know if there's anything you want to clear up or, you want to discuss for the next, hour or next 20, 40 minutes.
Well, hey, it's a lot, and the thing is that my main thing is just to clear up the misinformation. A lot of stuff's just been repeated year after year after year after year, And although this may sound not radical, but it may sound, negative or going against against Dr. York or whatever, but this is something that Nuwaubians just have to understand. And, there's several things that Nuwaubians wasted time with and lost focus on the actual prize of what's going on, Dr. York's innocence or his fight for freedom, and so on and so forth. So a lot of things are just, a lot of things are misinformation. There's a website called NuwaubianFacts.com, and that website pretty much just parrots or repeats anything that was produced by the Nuwaubian organization, and along with their own commentary and their own theories or whatever, their conspiracy theories and things. So that's actually not a good source, but it's popular, and a lot of people go to it, and a lot of Nuwaubians rely on that information to say what they say. And I can go through their website and just basically refute or correct a lot of that stuff. And like for example, the name thing that you brought up earlier, they Nuwaubians make a big deal about Dr. York's name, how his name is not Dwight York. And that's true. His name currently is not Dwight York, but his name was Dwight York. And Dr. York simply lied about that because he's on audio saying that's not his name, that never was his name, when in fact it was. You heard that too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's just not true. That was his name. That's the name he used in school as a young person. That's a name that his family knew him as well. And it's a name on legal documents. And he has a legal name change from that name to Isa El-Hadi El-Mahdi. So if it was never his name, then why would he file a petition to the court to change the name from that to something else? So that's a non-issue. So because Dr. York lied about it, Nuwaubians rallied behind that issue when it was never, ever an issue to begin with. And this is an example of what I mean when money and resources and time and focus is put on something that has no meaning, that's going to do nothing to help Dr. York. So it kind of goes back to your earlier question you asked me, what are some of the things I threw my hands up to? And that's one example. You won't find me on record arguing about the name or anything like that. But yes, his name is not currently Dwight York. That's true. but it's a non-issue because, matter of fact, on court documents, they put all his name. They list all the aliases that they think they found. You know, they have Malachi York. They have even misspell his name as aliases. They have Dwight York, Malachi York, Isa Muhammad, Abdullah Muhammad, Abd Muhammad, Isa Hadi al-Mahdi. You know, all these different aliases on there. So that's a non-issue.
Ask one more question.
Yeah,
go ahead, man.
Go ahead.
You got time. We got 30 more minutes. You could ask as much as you want, bro.
All right, thanks. Talking about the names and everything. Now, you know, they came out with this whole new name. A few years back, he was Kobina York, born in Ghana, Tokoradi, Ghana, and all this other stuff. He was born in Sudan. Since the movement been going on, he was in Sudan, and then he was in Ghana. But then on the birth certificate, I don't know if you remember that video. He said that he went to the Hall of Knowledge or something like that in Sudan to get his birth certificate.
Right.
And so he was. They said the Nuwabian brother that I spoke to said that was the birth certificate that was in Let's Set the Record Straight book. But when you look at that birth certificate, it has Boston, Massachusetts on there.
Right, exactly. Well, let me tell you about that. That birth, you know, his place of birth is very telling, and it kind of like opens the door for a whole bunch of problems because it kind of confirms the desperation that Dr. York goes through into saying and making claims that he does, because it kind of opens him up and makes him vulnerable for people to see the misinformation or just outright lies. So, for example, now it's said that he's born in Ghana, Takoradi, Ghana, and his name is Malachi Kobina York, and Kobina is because he was born on Tuesday at whatever time. Yeah, 12 midnight on Tuesday, June 26, 1945. Now check this out. If anyone is familiar with Akan culture and the naming, and this is consistent among the Ghanaians, when you're named for the day, you are given a name according to the day that you're born. This is part of your name. Being born at 12 midnight, that's only considered Tuesday in the West. It's not considered Tuesday. It's not considered the next day in Africa, in Ghana. 12 midnight on what we would call Tuesday is still Monday to them. So he wouldn't have the name Kobina from Kwabina or Kobina, which is the word for Tuesday. So he wouldn't even have been given that name Kobina, even if that was true. All right, so that's number one. And then number two, it's just not true. He wasn't born in Ghana because prior to that, he had made a claim that he was born in Sudan. And he wrote an entire story and explanation about it in the Ansar Code Rebuttal book, where he gives the story of how his mother went over to Sudan or went over to either Egypt or Sudan and met a charismatic person, and you know their relationship started immediately, and then she was pregnant, he was born, and then she flew back over here sometime in July. He was born June 26th, and she flew back over here a week later in July 3rd and registered him in Boston, Massachusetts. So that's how the story goes, and that's how he got his Boston birth certificate and so on and so forth. But that entire story was fabricated. There's no part of that story that was true at all. And you can actually read the story and see how it just doesn't make sense at all. Because, for example, Dr. York's mother, the Most High rest her soul, she's an ancestor now. So, may she rest in peace. Dr. York's mother put it this way, Dr. York has older siblings. Oba, which is his brother, which is David York Jr., and then his sister, Dale York, who everyone knows as Waki, or her current name. So the age difference between Dr. York and Waukee is rather close. So in order for his mother to leave the United States and go over to overseas, she would have to leave two very young, Waukee would be an infant, behind. And then get into a relationship with someone else immediately off the plane, because of the dates that he gives inside the anti-cult rebuttal book is very tight dates. I mean, she would have to step off the plane, meet a guy immediately, start a relationship in a matter of hours, get pregnant to give birth to him.
Mhm. I don't know if I dropped. I don't know if his call dropped. I think his call dropped. Yeah, his call dropped. Let me see if I could get him back on the line. Can I get him back on the line? If I could get the brother back on the line. Well, you know what, man? He's giving us a wealth of information, man. Regardless, so at the end of the day, man, I just appreciate the brother for coming on and definitely giving us the information that he has. As a matter of fact, let me see if I could add him. I could add him here. Let me try to add him on and see what happens here. Try to add a call. 1-770 9375.
It is always good to stand before you on the Lord's Sabbath day. In fact, this day, sisters and brothers, is what we're going to talk about and what it means. The title is...
All right, you're back on. All right, Brother Anpu is back on. Brother Gab, did you have another question, brother?
I was waiting for the doctrine questions for next week or 2 weeks from now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to touch on the doctrine probably next week. And that's going to probably be for another 4 episodes. And I don't know if we probably could get a victim or two to come on and talk about it if they feel like. And that could probably be episode 10 so that people could have like 10 episodes to go through and just decide from there which way they want to go, man. And that's my service to the community. That's it. I'm just putting the information out there. Just putting the information out.
And just to throw it in there, for the birth certificate, also, if you look on the birth certificate, it doesn't say he was born at 12 o'clock. It says, I think it says, well, like 9:10.
Yeah, it's 9:10, and it's witnessed by someone. Their name and signature is there, and it you know, I don't know where I got cut off earlier, but I was just basically saying the Sudanese, the entire Sudanese story was fabricated. You know, Dr. York was born in Massachusetts, in Sussex County, Massachusetts, Boston. And, you know, that's just part, and that information came out during the case. You know, now Dr. York didn't testify in court, but a lot of this would have been brought out if he were to take the stand and testify, because they would have asked, you know, background questions and things like that, where he would have had to go over his background and his history. But it did come out in the case, not in the trial, but it came out in the case. You know, his previous records, previous name, his schooling, his education, whether he really had degrees overseas, and all these different things came out during his case. But a lot of Nuwaubians have no idea about any of this information, because a lot of Nuwaubians don't put in the time to actually get all of the documents and go through them and read them themselves. Everybody's operating off of what the administration puts forth, the flyers and the websites and even the videos that have been produced about the case. So I've always encouraged people to get the documents and then go from there. Absolutely. But these are realities that have to be dealt with. You can't avoid it, and that's, you know, and it sounds negative, because if Dr. York says one thing, but here I am saying another thing, then I sound like a fool. You know, I sound like the bad guy. But now people could look it up. People could check it out, and they'll see it. They could see. I mean, some of these things are very clear. Like his name. Dr. York said his name was not Dwight York. Well, you can go in New York. You can actually go to the courthouse and pull the record for the name changes. There's 2 name changes, and most people only know about one. They see the name changing into Malachi York in 1993, March of 93, April, after it moved down to Georgia to Malachi York. And he wasn't able to use that name. Now, check this out. Dr. York was not able to use the name Malachi York until it was approved by the courts. So, and this approval came, I believe, in April of 1993. Prior to 1993, the land was purchased. So when you look at the deed on the land, you'll see him use his name, his previous name. The Malachi York is not on it. It's Dwight York.
You said it's Dwight York on it.
Yeah, it's Dwight York and Issa El-Mahdi. And you can pull that record and see that. So there, it's just different things. So I'm saying this to say because a lot of things that are propaganda, it really hurt Dr. York's efforts. It really did. It damaged it where it's irreversible. It's nothing can be done about those things because when you're dealing with the court system, things are done in a timely fashion. There's statute limitations on different things that you can do and can't do. So when your focus is in the wrong place, these remedies that may be available, they'll come and go. They'll come and go. So that's just very important, and that kind of speaks to Garfield's question about my feelings on throwing my hands up at different times. As long as I was focused and working on things that actually had value to them, I was okay. And when those things started running out and weren't getting support, then you look at it and say, okay, well, this is not looking good. It's not looking good. The Liberian thing, the entire Liberian project was a huge red herring diversion. It was never meant to work from the very beginning. Never meant to work from the very beginning. So
you can tell.
Right, exactly. I'll give you another example of what Dr. York does, or just let people know. During the whole Liberian issue, when it was going full force, Dr. York was saying that this sister that was spearheading it, that she was his DNA daughter, and I don't know if you remember that.
Who, Rochelle? You
remember that, right, Rochelle?
Yep.
Well, he was basically doing a lot of trying to convince everyone that she was his daughter, and the reason why was to reduce any kind of friction that she would receive, and for her to gain all the support, because he figured that by calling her his daughter, that everyone would automatically support her, do what she says, support her, and whatever she needed, whether it was financial or whatever, she would just receive it. So that was the easiest route to take, is by claiming that she was his daughter. Because, like, if one of his daughters that everyone's familiar with, like, for example, Hagar, a lot of people know Hagar, and if she was the one that was doing this, then a lot of people would have just supported automatically because of the love that they have for Hagar and the fact that they know that she's his daughter and so on and so forth, they would have given her support. So he basically kind of supplanted that with the sister Rochelle because of what she was doing. And a lot of people had a problem with that because they knew otherwise. They knew that she wasn't his daughter. But instead, they would say it and argue about that. And that became a big distraction, in and of itself. And I say that because these are the measures that Dr. York will take to move forward on something that he feels that he believes is going to work. And this is something that people have to understand. So when people get on the phone line or make comments like, hey, if I don't hear Dr. York say it, then, or who do we to believe? Are we going to believe Brother Anpu, or are we going to believe Dr. York? And see, when you're dealing with someone's credibility, you can't use them as their own confirmation, because their very credibility is in question. Like if somebody doubts what I say, you can't use what I say to support what I say in that instance. You got to find something that corroborates it and whatever. So, and I'm just saying that Dr. York is a human being that doesn't want to be in jail. He doesn't want to be in prison, and he will do what he feels that will change that. He will say whatever. What he will say, what he feels to say, to change that. So these are some of the things that people just have to understand. So when I come and say, hey, that's not going to work or whatever, I'm not saying it just to be negative. I'm saying it because I know what I'm talking about, and as time goes on, it just unfolds and verifies itself. The MLK thing, like you mentioned, Project Rise Up. The main thing of that DC trip. You went on a DC trip?
Oh yeah, I was there.
Okay, well the main thing about the DC trip was the Martin Luther King holiday issue, right?
The trial, yeah. I was holding a court case on Martin Luther King Day.
Exactly. Well, that's not illegal. But Nuwaubians act as though it was illegal, and as though something can be filed about that. And that's just not true. So that entire trip, the money that it took to for people to drive up there, fly up there,
oh man,
the room and board, for people who stayed overnight, that all of that to set up, the time and energy was what was it for, really?
And that was my question, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because I was going to give another example. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that was my point. My questions I had, like, what was all this for? Because I stayed in the very next day as well when we marched. We was going to go to Al Sharpton. That's when they was doing the whole Boston Tea Party thing. And
right.
We was going there at 9 a.m. sharp to approach him and ask him how come he ain't helping the master teacher, Dr. York, at the time. And we didn't leave the hotel until about 11. By the time we got into the midst of the march, they was already done packing up. And they told us to keep on marching anyway. We trying to get publicity with news, the local news, and people interviewing us so we can get our story out there. Yeah, the banners and everything.
Everything I got, exactly.
It was only one person. It was a young kid who just started doing reporting. That's the only person who interviewed him. That's it. No one else.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Because really it ended up being a very, very expensive photo op. That's really what it ended up being, a very expensive photo op where people were able to say, yes, I went. You're able to see a couple of T-shirts there, people in the T-shirts, people at the podium giving a speech only to Nuwaubians. Now, mind you, the people that spoke are speaking to Nuwaubians, and this is the problem. A lot of things that have taken place, the flyers, the websites, everything is really geared towards the Nuwaubian and not the public and not the legal professionals that can actually help. The audience there was Nuwaubians. Yep. It's like you're going to give a protest, but yet you're going to be the audience of your own protest. That's not how it works. So that was a very expensive photo op. That's what it really ended up being.
You're right, man. That was a lot of people.
And that took a lot of money. And then people want to complain about all the money that's spent, and they want to know where the money went and stuff like that. A lot of money was wasted. A lot of money was wasted. Back in 2000, I can tell you this. Back in 2004, the Sister Rochelle gave a meeting, and she quoted how much money was spent up until that point, and we were well into the millions of dollars back then. That was 2004. So you can imagine from that point until now what the grand total is.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money. That was some was well spent, but a lot was wasted. And when I say wasted, I'm talking about wasted in terms of on frivolous projects, frivolous ideas that was never going to work from its inception, but it was supported and financed anyways, only because it sounded good. Only because it sounded good.
Do you remember when they did they stand in front of the city halls and they had they was emulating what Doc was going through? They had the tape, they dressed in orange jumpsuits. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was a part of that too.
That also. That wasn't working because the torture complaint got dismissed. People don't understand. The torture complaint that was filed got dismissed. There's several projects that I could speak about that was just frivolous, that either got dismissed or was frivolous, it didn't work, or it's a lot of stuff. Like, for example, Nuwaubians will say that Dr. York was kidnapped. But when you use the word kidnap, they don't understand that just turns people off, because what is the difference between being arrested and kidnapped? There's a difference between that. And Dr. York was arrested on May 8th. He was not kidnapped. Now, on the street, layperson, you can use the word kidnap all you want to, but that has no meaning whatsoever in the legal realm until you use it properly for legal purposes. So if Dr. York was truly legally kidnapped, then why wasn't kidnapping charges filed against anyone or accusations against anyone? Where's the documentation for that? There is none. There is none. So Nuwaubians to this day will say that, hey, the master teacher was kidnapped, but that's not true. Dr. York was arrested. The master teacher was arrested. He wasn't kidnapped.
Mm-hmm. All right, my brother. We're gonna leave it here for this week, and then we're gonna next week we're gonna touch into the doctrine, and we're gonna do a whole 10-part series, man, and then we're just gonna blast it all over Facebook so people could just listen to each one and draw their own conclusion and use common sense. All right, but
now Garfield. Now people are gonna listen to this and the previous shows, and then people are gonna have some questions, some aftermath type questions. So I do want to make myself available for anyone that has something to say based on what was said. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to let you know, at least let's probably reserve a show reserve a show just to kind of get all the different feedback type of questions, because there's people that's going to listen to what I say and say that I'm wrong, or I lost my mind, or they're going to call me some kind of, all these kind of devils and agents and stuff like that. So that's going to happen.
Hey, the best thing to do is this. Tell anybody who have questions to tune in next week and call in and ask questions. Because once you get on Facebook and start going back and forth, that's a forever thing, man. So that's what I would suggest. Tell them to listen to 1 to 4, and then call in for part 5. That's what I'm saying. So if you're gonna move on to the doctrine, I was gonna say maybe after that or even before that to have a show set aside for the people. You know how these people are, bro. You know how they are. Even though we talk about the doctrine, they're gonna call in and ask their own damn questions. They don't care about no food, no order, nothing. You know how we are, bro.
Well, yeah, it's all good. So yeah, I'm just saying I'm open for that. For your listeners. Ask questions. Because, see, it's hard for me to, like how you just said, I got 40 minutes to talk. It's really hard for me to do stuff like that because I got so much that I could say. It's hard for me to pinpoint something to talk about. So I have to operate off
Hey,
questions,
you know what? We never asked you tonight.
What's that?
Although you did talk about the whole thing. Where was Dr. York born? Where was he born?
He was born in Boston.
All right, he was born in Boston.
He was born in Massachusetts, yeah. Okay. He was born in Massachusetts. He wasn't born in Sudan. He wasn't born in Ghana. Although he said he was born in Sudan, and although he said he was born in Ghana. Now, if you just take the logic of using what Dr. York says, then Dr. York himself says two different things. Sudan, and he gave a whole elaborate story about it. And then later is Takoradi, Ghana. So, you got to ask yourself, well, which one's correct? So then a spin has to be created to justify that. So then there's a story created where, he really wasn't told of his real birth until, more recent time, and this is why they're going forward with the whole Ghana issue and things like that. So, it's a big mess. It's a big mess.
All right, my brother. So we're going to call it a night, and thanks again, man. Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Brother Gav, thanks for calling in and actually being brave enough to punch one and ask a question, man. Thanks for that, my brother. And Brother Anpu, man, yeah, man, much love, Brother Anpu, and we'll be back on next week at 7 p.m. We could start at 6:30 if you want. If you're available from 6:30, we could start at 6:30 or even 6 o'clock. Just tell me what time you want to start, and we can get it going. All right?
Yeah, 6 is good because like you said, even though you want to talk about the doctrine next time, those questions will come. I'll just be available for that. But the doctrine, it's so much. You probably have a 20-part series when you want to talk about the doctrine.
All right, my brother.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, my brother. Peace.
All right. Peace.